We'll now move on to a discussion, but I'd like to open to start with, before I take my opportunity as chair to ask some questions.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rajesh Chen, and I'm business development from Siemens Energy. Thank you very much for such a nice presentation and discussion. If you just see COVID era, when COVID came, at least technology-wise, we were very ready, and the moment it came, remote working started immediately. When we see our speakers, they are talking about pressure in maritime industry for decarbonization. Thankfully, again, technologies are ready. We have got our solutions like Ocean Green or complete electric propulsion system, or you name the solution and these are available. So my question to Mr. Mohamed and Mr. Ammar is, how can we accelerate to improve adaptation of these technologies to the industry? Thank you.
So, do you want to take that question first? It's really about how we can accelerate technologies and pick up the pace a bit.
Yes, thank you for your question. Now, technology adaptation has to be part of the company's strategy. And you have to actually have an open mind and a vision towards where you actually want to achieve. Technology have to answer questions to challenges. It's not just adapting for the sake of just adapting technology. So I think the companies, they have to search within their operations how to actually make it more efficient, how to actually bring solutions that can add more value, and accordingly define the technology required in order to achieve these objectives. Thank you.
Thanks for that questions. It's really, you touched the points of our discussions today, which in Abu Dhabi Ports Group today we have investing hugely, and not only in the technologies but also in the digitalizations or R&Ds. Today we have seen the R&Ds also is playing vital roles into accelerating the transactions of the sustainabilities and also the reductions of the carbon emissions in our industries, where we need also as a port authorities, ship owners, shipping companies, and also technologies companies to have a more collaborations into the synergies into these targets, which we have to achieve it. We are also investing a lot in the technologies that not only can giving us a returns of reductions in the carbons, but also in the optimizations into our operations. The colleagues today was showing the number of the tankers shipping in it is already in the orders, and these numbers of huge orders taking place not only in the tankers but also in the other segments such as Ro-Ro, bulk vessels, container vessels, which need a lot of innovations and creations to be taken in place for such of technologies to be enhanced. And that's also what we have mentioned, that the public and private partnerships need to take immediate participations into our maritime industries to accelerate these transactions. And I believe this is what the collaborations need to be taken in between the parties and in between the entities.
Thank you. I wondered, Frank, at the end, as a technology supplier, whether you have a view on this. I mean, to what extent are you seeing sort of resistance to taking up new technologies, and what are the factors that are triggering that, or are you seeing a completely different? As a technology supplier, I wondered if you have a particular perspective on that question, which seemed to suggest, that there was a need for owners to sort of pick up the pace in terms of embracing new technologies. I just wondered if there are any constraints, or whether perhaps you have a different perspective to that put forward by the questioner.
I think from Alfa Laval, we are ready to support with any technology. We know that there are different fuels, there are different environmental solutions, and we don't like to put all bets on one solution. So whatever fit the vessel owners best when it comes to availability of fuels and when it comes to the profile of the sailing and the technology, we will offer a various portfolio of solutions.
And Richard, I don't know from a classification society perspective, do you have a sense about what is needed to get the industry to sort of accelerate its take-up of the available technologies, some of which you highlighted in your presentation?
Outside the budget, you mean?
Sorry?
Outside the budget, you know, you will need the money for it, right? But to accelerate this, I think what is needed is we need some brave people in the industry taking this forward. That's one thing. You know, not everybody can actually do this. We need some first adapters to take the technology forward. And like I said, you know, will the brave actually get it right?
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to ask one question about Richard's presentation. There was some information about that now order book for the new vessel is still 70% on traditional fuel. Just wanted to ask, what do you think, what exactly we are doing wrong now? And how do you see the future when order book is 100% of alternative fuel? And one more extra question, do we have any new ideas for the fuel, or maybe nuclear fuel can be in the future for the vessels?
Well, it says
Thank you.
two questions. I think that was a sort of key statistic from your presentation about 70% of the order book still being conventional fuel.
Yes.
So maybe you want to respond to that, but I think it's perhaps something that we need to discuss, what it means and how can we move the dial a bit.
Because the thing is, I think this is mainly driven by the fact that we don't know. It's a safe choice at the minute. What I also said during my presentation is that we should not forget that the designs we're going to hit the water, let's say 2-3 years from now, are much more fuel efficient. So even if they burn the same fuels as we do today, they are much more fuel efficient. So there is a big gain in having those new designs on the water. No doubt. We also see, because yes, they are built traditional. What we don't really see in the background is that, you know, are they methanol ready? Are they ammonia ready? Are they LNG ready? These kind of things are happening as well. But for sure, let's say 10 years from now, we are looking at, you know, retrofits also for those new vessels, and no doubt. And if you look at not just the tanker market, if you look at bulk carriers, you see more or less the same kind of numbers. And the fact is that if you think about tankers and you think about bulk carriers, it's an older fleet, and the industry, we need to do something. Those ships need to be replaced. Also, there's an ask for more ships because of what's happening in the world. But at the minute, it's a safe choice. But for sure, we will see something retrofits on those ships within 10 years. And I think. Going to take the second question on nuclear?
The second question was around, I think, dual fuels, the alternatives, which is quite another interesting question. We've heard about methanol, there's ammonia, there's all sorts of technologies. We've got wind power. What do you see when you're looking to the future, specifically for the tanker market?
Well, at the minute, LNG, no doubt. We have seen Maersk working with methanol, but they're moving towards LNG as well. The simple reason being is known technology. It's available, much more available than methanol and ammonia. And we have talked about LNG for a long time as an interim fuel. It might be an interim fuel, but the interim period is going to run like 20 or 30 years. So you can easily build an LNG dual fuel VLCC and run it for 30 years as an interim fuel even. And you know, I think most of us are engineers. Even the issues we are having with LNG, you know, the engineers will get it sorted. Those problems will get solved. So LNG is the number one choice for alternative fuels. Okay,
thank you. Frank, do you want to come in on this? Is this from your perspective? How do you see? I mean, the moving the dial to sort of get the fleets of the future to be move away from conventional fuels. How do you see it from your perspective?
I think it's going to be a gradual development, right? So, just like Richard was saying, LNG is probably the most prominent now. There is a lot of opportunities with the methanol, ammonia, and so on. I personally don't think you should totally blindside the nuclear opportunities that will come in the future, although that they will be way further out. But I think it's going to be very gradual, and you will see the gases does seem interesting. They will, like the fuel, be mixed up with more environmental friendly gases and energies. So I think it's a very gradual development we go through, and also ships will develop. So for every generation of whether it's tankers, bulkers, and so on, it gets better and better. We've just been looking at some new tonnage ourselves, and the development that has gone from one generation to the other is quite astonishing. And I think we will move in that direction. And new things will come, like the fantastic thing we saw with the electrical tugboat, having a very strong pull power. Well, developments will go there, and I wouldn't be surprised that we'll see similar things being adapted to other ships also.
Thank you. I mean, Nitin, you're a company that's been investing in tonnage. What was your thinking process when you were approaching that from an environmental sustainability point of view? And how were you balancing out the pros and cons of the different options available to you?
Sure. I mean, I think
that was a question for Nitin.
The way we look at it, we look at a whole roadmap from 2025 onwards to 2050 when we are looking at a net zero carbon. So we look at the roadmap. We see at what point what do we need to do. So if you look at it, we've adopted a strategy where we are unsure of what is the next generation fuel. So we've kept our ships ready for methanol, ammonia, LPG, but we haven't really made the call. I mean, primarily because first, there is very little infrastructure. Then the technology, even though we say that the technology is there, but there is a lot of issues with the engines which are dual fuel. And anybody who's run dual fuel engines here would agree to this, that there is still a lot of learning in that. So we're kind of adopting that piece by piece, and then staying very agile, neutral to the next generation fuels.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I hope that answered the question of the lady at the back. Any other questions from the floor?
Do you mind if I just say
certainly.
one more thing on nuclear, because we got the question yesterday as well. If something's going to cause a revolution in the shipping industry, I think it's going to be nuclear, because think about it. No NOxes, no SOxes, no greenhouse gases, safe. And the thing is, it will completely change the design of the ships. You design a ship with 30 years worth of fuel already on board. You will design a ship with no tanks. It will just completely change how the ships are gonna look like. They're gonna be traded. It's gonna have that will cause a revolution. That will be the ship of the. If you think about big tonnage, right? Then this is the way forward. I'm pretty much convinced.
Okay, well, that's an interesting point. It'd be interesting to know what the man in the street's view of nuclear-powered ships, trading regularly would be. I think that may be a barrier, mightn't it? But
that's the biggest issue. Yeah.
Clive, if you just allow me. Now, the question about the alternative fuel, before we ask, is actually why we are doing it. It's mainly we want to decarbonize. To decarbonize, you don't only need to look at alternative fuel, but there are many things you have to also do with making vessels more efficient, looking at the other type of ways that you can capture the emissions. So there is not one single solution that can achieve your objective. So you have to combine all these efficiencies, capturing of emissions, plus the alternative fuel altogether to achieve the decarbonization requirement. Now, when each operator will have a different answer because every trading pattern will have a different way to decarbonize. It's not going to be a single answer that's going to fit for all. So when you look at people who are actually designing vessels to trade from Arabian Gulf to Far East, it will be completely different from the guys who are actually building the vessels from trading to Europe. Because the infrastructure and the availability of the fuel also will play a big part in this question. So whenever we design vessels, we have to first look at how best we can make them most efficient possible to reduce the amount of fuel required to propel the vessel. And accordingly, that will make many other alternative fuel solutions possible. Because many of the challenges we face with methanol, with ammonia, that the calorific value is very low and you need bigger storage capacities. However, if you make the vessels more efficient, these questions are actually becoming better answered. So also, why we are building dual fuel is because we need to have the flexibility. I mean, this is not helping the decarbonization if we continue on burning heavy fuel oil while we are actually having a dual fuel capability on the vessel itself. But because we are not sure about the infrastructure, we are designing it in this way. Maybe in the future you will find a single fuel or a triple fuel, whatever it is. It depends on the trading pattern. You need to actually understand exactly where the vessel is being, or estimate at least, or make the best assumption. What's the speed? I mean, I've seen vessels being optimized for an efficiency to actually go on 15 knots of speed, but most of their life they spend it on 12 knots. This is not the most efficient way to design vessels. So the issue is, I think, is first look at the design, look at where it's going to be trading, and accordingly start deciding on what fuel means that you want to actually design this vessel for, and how long you want to maintain this vessel. Why we want to meet 2050 requirement? Because if we know for a fact that this vessel will not even last until 2050, maybe you need to think about building vessels for the next 15 years. What will be the requirement to meet in the next 15 years? So, and this is how you will be able to answer your questions. Unfortunately, there is not a single answer that's going to fit for everybody, but you need to look from your perspective, what would be the best answer.
Would you like to answer?
Yeah. Actually, now she touched in very sensitive topics and questions for the alternative fuels. Today in AD Ports Group, we have invested in 2 BCTC. For example, and I'm taking the reference of Captain Mohammed's speech, that these 2 BCTC, it has a capacity of 7,000 units of the car carriers. And when we have taken that decisions, is to have a dual fuels on board the vessels, can operate and ship the cargoes by LNGs, as well as having the conventional fuels. Is it that something that's enough for as a ship owners to invest? Of course not. It is a collaborations and the combinations in between the shipping industries and the government around the world to work together into what's the futures energies will be taken. I totally agree with Captain Mohammed. It depends on the shipping owners and also the trades lanes where these cargoes or these ships it will be deployed to. In Abu Dhabi ports, we have also signed an MOU with Masters to facilitate the green hydrogen's powers for the vessels calling into our ports. As well as in the Red Sea, we have signed an MOU with the key partners that we can facilitate the storage and also ammonia bunker supplies for trades, world shipping operators that trading is in between the Mediterranean seas, Red Seas, and Far East. So the responsibilities, I believe, it is a shared amongst the industries in the maritime, but at the same time, is need to have a major investments to take in a place for the infrastructures, where today it's a combinations in between the governments and the shipping and the maritime industries.
Thank you. One question I have. There's been a little bit more interest lately in carbon capture as an option. I just wondered if anybody on the panel feels that this is going to be at all relevant for the tanker shipping industry. Richard, do you want to start? I'll get the ball rolling. I mean, I know there are societies that are doing improvals in principle, and there have been some sort of projects. It's early days yet, isn't it? But is it going to come into tanker shipping, or is it more other sectors that are going to be looking at this?
No, I think I would say yes. I mean, we have done 4 ships now with EPS. Actually, have a carbon capture class notation. The thing is, once you capture the carbon, what do you do with it? You know, this is the second thing. But I would say yes. It's a big investment. I think that's, you know, you talk about huge capex, but I would say for the tanker market, definitely yes.
Yeah, I would like to add on that. So we've looked at carbon capture quite deeply. Tanker shipping is actually ideal for it, to be honest. There are trade routes which are quite fixed, especially on the larger tankers, VLCCs. What do you do with the carbon, and how much of capex do you put into the ship is what is the point. So first of all, what do you do with it? So there is, in coming back to say Persian Gulf, there is always the ability to do sequestration of the carbon. But then how much capex do we actually put onto the ship? How do you actually store carbon on board? That technology is still quite not there. And also can you actually retrofit on ships? Do we have enough power to actually do that? Because we've already fitted EGCS and things like that. So that would probably require more power source and may not really be that carbon neutral, to be honest. So we've looked at it, but a lot more research needs to be done on it.
Okay. Frank, do you want to?
Yeah, I think the carbon capture question, in my view, can really be boiled down to one thing, and that is we have to find a way for that to be effective. We have to find a way to reduce the energy required to capture that carbon. It's an enormous amount of energy that is being used there. And if we succeed in finding a more efficient way, then I think the technology is much more promising than what it is today.
Okay, thank you. Interesting. One to watch for the future anyway.
Hello again, Alexandra, ADNOC Marine Shipping Service. I'm a tanker shipbroker. One more question about my previous question. Thanks a lot for information about Abu Dhabi port, but what do you think about whole world? How many ports or main ports are ready to provide equipment for LNG or ammonia or other alternative fuel bunkering? Thank you.
A good question around the sort of the shoreside infrastructure. I don't know if that's one that you would like to take on.
Thanks for this questions. Today in ED ports, we are operating in around 35 terminals around the world, and based to our networks and connectivities in our port operations, that it won't be limited into the hubs that we are trying to create, especially today in Arabian Gulf and the MENA regions, as in our strategy to have also emphasized presence in the Mediterranean Sea, as well as in the Africa. Today, seriously, and this is a very serious topics, most of the discussions, we forget the elements in the room, where today a lot of trades, it has a connections in terms of the networks and connectivities, where today the investment is not being taken in a place in these infrastructures, especially in the continents of Africa. Today we are having an operations in numbers of ports and terminals in Africa, and based on our strategy to promote these bunkering hubs into the places. You might see now the Red Sea disruptions is taking a place, where most of the vessels is taking the other sides of the routes, where it's a big needs and requirements of bunkering hubs in the west coast of Africa, for an example. And these investments need to be taken across the main operators in terms of the ports and, of course, the ship owners. Today, there is a number of challenges we can address it. Whose responsibilities has been taken in that perspectives. We have seen the best and practices can be taken is to have a joint corporations in between the strategies of the ship owners and, of course, the governments to emphasize and to also to accelerate the speed of these transactions.
Captain Al Ali, do you want to?
Sure. So the main challenge with the infrastructure, the regulation, which is the main driver why we are doing all of this, is actually on the ship owners. It's not on the ports. It's not on the people who provide the infrastructure. So the driver, I believe, is also missing. Now, why would the ports to go and invest for providing LNG fuel while there are not many ships can, call the port? So their investment is also actually going to be a big concern. Yes, some ports will take the initiatives, will lead, and they are taking bold decisions. They see the future, but it's not a rule for everybody to follow. I think this is where the collaboration comes into play, where the ship owners and the ports, they start working very closely in order to ensure that they ensure the demand for the port, and the port start making the development of the infrastructure. Now, if you look at around Europe, why the LNG became all of a sudden very wide network? The regulation drove this. They had to do it. But in the other parts of the world, this regulation is actually missing. So if you actually also look at the role of the governments to ensure that the right regulation is in place for the infrastructure to be developed, and then you can see that that these infrastructures will be available. When we're looking at all the alternative fuel, and we were calling various parts of the world, are you going to make it happen? They were saying, okay, you assure us the demand. They don't want to make the investment unless the demand comes forward. So this is, I think, it's a kind of a chicken and egg and dilemma that most of the people are facing.
Okay. Thank you very much. Hope that answers the question.
Thank you again. Actually, it's not a question, but just wanted to inform the audience here and also the panel. Abu Dhabi government has taken a big step in this technology regard, and they have collaborated with Siemens Energy, and we have got an innovation center in Khalifa University in Abu Dhabi, where the target is to come together with the end users and develop a solution which is already there, maybe not fully scaled, but this can be developed. And we are joining hands with ADNOC, with TAQA, with Masdar for several such development. So I would really invite the end users and the technology partners to come together and help this industry to develop these solutions for future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Peter Sahlen at the end there. Alfa Laval are working on a number of different types of technologies. In terms of shipyard, I mean, there was a report recently. I think Lloyd's Register might have published it, which talked about the need for some quite significant conversions and upgrades to ships to meet environmental targets, and perhaps there might be a constraint in terms of the ability to provide the technology in shipyards, the labour force, skills. I just wondered what your take on that in terms of, we're talking about this theme about partnerships. What needs to happen to ensure that if ship owners, tanker ship owners, want to upgrade their ships, that they are able to do so?
So you're talking about shipyards, or you're talking about crew?
A bit about both.
A bit of both, yeah. Because I think the big thing is that with all those future fuels, alternative fuels, there was one thing we know for sure: they're not going to be as safe as good old heavy fuel oil, right? So you're right. In the shipyards, if they work with LNG, if they work with ammonia, if they start testing and running the engine rooms, this is probably the most tricky bit, the most dangerous bit. Once the ship is in service, it's up and running. But if you do this for the first time, it's a scary bit of the of getting the ship commissioned. And if you think about then the next stage, and we didn't really talk about crew and training, but now you can swap crew around, on your ships quite easily. In the future, you might be jumping from an ammonia fueled ship to an LNG fueled ship to a conventional fueled ship. How are we going to do that? How are we going to look after our crews? How are we going to train them? How are we going to make sure everybody's safe? And maybe we need entirely different trained people, different educated people. I don't even want to talk about nuclear here when it comes to crew, but you might be looking at very, very different kind of skill sets. So yes, I think there's a lot to do, which is a shared responsibility for the entire industry, right? We should not leave it to the ship owners or the shipyards or the engine manufacturers to train, their people and the crews. It's something we need to do as an industry.
Okay, good. Peter,
Yes, I can comment on this also when it comes to retrofit and bringing on new technologies. In Alfa Laval, we have soon populated 10,000 ballast water systems, and maybe 8,000 has been retrofitted. And I can tell you that we learned a lot from the early days, and lessons learned is that we need to have a good cooperation with not only the shipyard, but the shipyard, the vessel owners. We need to do training in time, and also have a rules and responsibility matrix so we know what is my responsibility, what is your responsibility, what is ours. And I think key is planning and making sure, and pre-meeting, pre-alignment meeting, because you gain that back. I think in the beginning it took us 3 weeks to do a retrofit. In the end, now we do it less than 1 week, and with much less hassles.
Okay, thank you very much. Frank, I mean, you're obviously part of a company that has both shipping and shipyards, so I just wondered if you had a particular perspective on how to ensure that the necessary capabilities and technologies are in place.
No, but I think it's obvious. I think the technologies are there. We have all these things. Shipyards will develop to fit into what the owners want to buy. I think the largest challenge we have is definitely crew. The crew, the sourcing, the training, the development, and the retention of crew is extremely complicated exercise. Personally, we are lucky. We are in Oman. We develop a lot of Omani crew. Is it easy? No. Is it costly? Yes. But it's really one of the ways forward. As we see it today, then the availability of structured and good crew is getting harder. We are in different segments in the shipping industry, and we can easily see that in the lower paying parts of the industry, part of the segments, being the bulkers, being the containers, the quality is challenging. The change of officers is frequent. The higher you get into the segments, ending up with LNG, maybe cruise is different, I don't know much about that. There the retention is much better. So there's no doubt that going ahead, we will have to do a lot more investment in crew, a lot more of investment in crew in areas that we are not, in lack of a better word, utilizing right now. Because we can't expect to just continue to go the same way and get a better result. Over time, we have seen that it is getting more and more challenging. And it's not because people are different, or people are different, but it's rather because the wealth generation in the world is increasing. So you have a much bigger middle class today than you had 20 or 30 years ago. And that means that crew sourcing is changing, and the attraction that we have to develop to get crew in is also changing. Which means in the end, cost is going to go up, but that's the same for everybody.
Nitin, as a ship owner, do you have any sort of particular initiatives underway on a crewing level that might reflect some of the comments that have been made?
Certainly. I think, again, as Richard pointed out, it's pretty clear that the next generation fuel is not going to be just one fuel. So we will have to cross-train our crew. And we are all, the journey starts now, really. We are getting our crew to get trained into various different fuels right up front. And as the technology develops and as we get into different kind of ships, we can then utilize that. But definitely it's going to be a major challenge going forward with the crew and crew training. And we have to take it up now.
Thanks. I don't know if you would again, as a ship owner, I presume this is something that's very much close to your heart and that you do have a number of programs underway.
Yeah, I mean, in ADNOC Logistics and Services, we have focused in many segments that it can actually improve the efficiency and sustainability of our fleet. So we provided shore power in our ports that supports, consuming less fuel, I would say, because you're still using the onshore grid where it is actually powered by gas turbines. But it is definitely contributing to the decarbonization. We have utilized the biodiesel on some of our coastal fleet. That again, that an initiative that supporting the sustainability of our fleet. We also adopted many energy efficiency devices on the vessels and operational efficiencies in order to reduce the overall emissions. The integrated smart logistics solution that we have implemented in our operations that supports to delivering more cargo with less number of vessels and accordingly less carbon emissions. So there are so many initiatives that we try to do to ensure, but there is always a limited what you can do with your vessels, because at the end of the day, capex investments, with the more complex solutions could be quite costly. Who will pay for it? That was always the problem. Sometimes, yes, we can, in our position, take the fuel under our responsibility, and accordingly, we take care of the cost of the fuel, and we take care of the cost of the investments for the sustainability solutions. We have done this in some areas to a certain degree, but I wouldn't say that would be a solution for everybody across the board. It's always about who will pay for the fuel. So this is where the collaboration comes into play that makes these solutions are actually feasible.
Good morning, everyone. I was just listening what Captain Mohammed was saying about the situation for the owners being very difficult because of the capex involved in setting up these alternate fuel systems. My first question is, what do you think is the best bet for the owners, knowing that the infrastructure for the alternate fuels is still some time away? So when you build a ship today, what do you spend your 5 to 8 million on? LNG, methanol, ammonia, hydrogen is also in the pipeline, but these things are still a bit of a gray area. So the onus comes on the shipping community to spend money on the ships, spend on the capex, with a risk that this infrastructure may not be in place 4 years down the line when the ship comes out. So that's a huge gamble. Secondly, as Captain Mohammed mentioned, who will pay for this? Ships have to go to Europe, they have to pay ETS. Are the charterers willing to pay for that ETS? If not, then why would you do a voyage which makes a loss of a couple of $100,000 just to deliver fuel to the EU? So these are all quandaries which we as ship owners are facing today with no easy solution or low-hanging fruit. So like all the speakers, I really appreciate the input. Like they said, we have to get together. This cannot be done alone. But I don't think any of us has the golden spoon to find a solution or the one solution which works for all of us. And sadly, shipping community is always at the receiving end of all regulations. And I think we need to get together and raise our voice that when regulations are implemented, the infrastructure ashore must also keep up with the requirements implemented on the ship owners. Thank you.
If anybody else who wants to take on that question, I suppose the question is, when you're ordering a ship, you have to. Is there an element of gambling? What you're going to spend your money on to prepare for, as well as what it is now? I mean, I guess that if I understood the question correctly, I mean, Nitin, was that something that?
I think it's all about the trade routes your ship is going to be following. So we are keeping our options open. And you're absolutely right. There is no one single answer. So, you have to have your options open. And frankly, on your other question, are we going to take a cargo into Europe where you're losing a couple of $100,000? The answer is no.
Richard, do you have I think you had your...
Well, if you think about, I said it a little bit earlier, if you think about infrastructure being ready, then I think LNG is the safest bet at the minute, because if you look at about ammonia, methanol, except for some places in like Rotterdam and Singapore, it's hardly available for the industry. And if you think about not just shipping industry, you think a little bit bigger, then these fuels, there's a shortage. How much is the shipping industry actually going to get, of the ammonia and the methanol available globally? So that's another case. So I think LNG would be the safe bet, 5 to 8 million. Not sure if that's enough, but yes, maybe. But also don't forget, I think nobody's going to run ships at a loss. Nobody's going to trade to Europe at a loss. But if you do have compliance vessels, you can actually make money on this, right? So. And we heard a lot about pooling, which might work. Some of the ships might not rust, some of the other ships might not. So pooling ships might be another way out of this as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Frank, do you have a response?
Yeah, I think it's the question is good, and it's what we have been discussing here. The LNG, as said, is the safest bet, but it's also very expensive. The cheapest bet is to go for methanol, seen from a ship owner's perspective. I think the best bet is to go for finding all the things you can to reduce your consumption and hence your emission going forward. And if we all look at what is being ordered, well, then there are a few very innovative ships, very expensive ships, but most of them are something ready. They're ready for LNG, they're ready for ammonia, they're ready for whatever. And that means that in reality, nobody really knows. We're going forward the best we can, we hope for something, but the best thing to do is to find all the ways in the world to just get the consumption down.
Good morning. I'm Captain Mathur from Abu Dhabi Ports. The current scenario is that we have to look at this fuel debate into two aspects. One is the commercial aspect and one is the technical. Now, I would say these two are two different areas. When we say that we have to come up with a single fuel, that will be the best option given the current scenario for all the ship owners. And I rightly agree with Mr. Gupta here, who just mentioned that there are no strict or not, there is not a single rule saying that we should use X fuel or the Y fuel. For example, ammonia, we all know that it is dangerous. There are safety issues. LNG has its own limitations for a few years, but it is not zero emission as yet. So my request would be like, class, it's a regulatory authority, all the class can come together, probably in the long run, and they can sit with the IMO and decide on the long-term solution, because any capex investment made by any ship owner has to last longer for, let's say, about 20 years or 30 years. And we can't be waiting for making short-term investments and then wait for what will happen with a particular type of fuel. So that is my 2 cents here in this conference. That's all. Thank you.
Richard, I must admit, I struggled to hear some of it. I think my sound wasn't good, but did you manage to catch enough to be able to answer it?
Well, I think something about a single fuel and the roll-off class and IMO.
Yeah.
the thing is, don't forget with IMO, you know, Klaas is only there as an advisor, right? You know, we don't have votes within IMO, and also, you know, our industry has been from wind to steam to fuel oil. You know, we always been running the ships on a single fuel. I'm pretty sure going forward that's not going to be the case. You know, it's almost impossible, because depending on the size of the ship, you know, if you think small ships, you might be looking at batteries and hydrogen. If you think bigger ships, we're looking at the ammonias and the LNGs. And also depending what ship type you run, what size of ship you run, the route you are taking, the decisions are going to be different. So it's a very, very difficult situation we are in. But a single source of fuel, I don't think it's going to happen anymore going forward.
Thank you. One question we did, we briefly mentioned there the European Union's ETS scheme, and that's this new regulatory issue. I just wonder, is it, because I'm not a tanker shipping, I don't own and operate tanker ships, is it already starting to have an impact on trading patterns and the way people operate? Nitin, is it something that's, is ETS something that is now something very much to the forefront of tanker operators' minds, and how is it having an impact?
Certainly, I think that has a huge impact on the voyages. So definitely on the forefront of everybody's mind, and definitely I think regulations within shipping are going to make changes. I mean, if you just have to look at the past. When it came to ballast water treatment system, when we had a deadline, the industry managed to adapt within time. When it came to changing fuels, exactly the same. So I'm quite sure it's the regulations which are going to drive changes here than the will of ship owners, to be honest, because at the end of the day, it's a business. We need to be able to run it profitably. So we always need to look at it that way. And when it comes to regulations, then it becomes a level playing field for everyone.
Okay, that's true. Frank, you're nodding your head. Is it?
No, I fully agree. I see it absolutely eye to eye. We always find the solution one way or the other, hook or crook. We'll find that.
Peter, at the end, I mean, from Alfa Laval's point of view, what are the main regulatory pressures at the moment that you're seeing ship owners responding to in terms of your business?
I think this future fuel, this is a concern for everyone, and we have heard the discussion which fuel to go for, etc. And we also have the discussions internally, are we going to invest in that fuel, on that fuel? But it is a very, very, very difficult question, and that's why we go broad. But I think someone here in the panel said something smart. Maybe the safe bet is work with fuel efficiencies, because regardless which fuel you make, you will get a safe gaining from that one. But we are not convinced it's going to go that direction or that direction. I mean, we saw the change of direction Maersk took in August, and I think that took everyone a little bit with its surprise. All the business analysts, Gartners, etc. The projection for methanol was really steep, and then we have the paradigm shifts back to LNG.
So, yeah, there's no sort of clear, sometimes there's a little bit of, not wavering, but getting that consistency of message from major ship owners is not always there.
No, I think this is very, very difficult question for the ship owners, and we have seen ship owners holding back in investments on new build because they don't know what to equip their vessel with, but now they are forced because we have an aging fleet, and in the end you have to take something, and we see all level of methanol or ammonia ready, and what's the definition of that is that you have some space in the engine room. Has you got the pre-class approval, or have you installed a fuel supply system that can handle two fuels? So but yeah, we are there, and we try to assist whatever technology preference the vessel owner do have.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Ankit Sharma from Wärtsilä, and we are also into the business of providing maritime simulation technology to training centers and shipping companies. Now, what we are seeing as a phenomena is that I can put a LNG bunkering or a methanol handling simulator inside a classroom, but the problem that comes now to us as technology providers is, can you help us finding people who have experience of sailing on these ships? Is there enough manpower to now train our crew? So how do we handle? So there is a race going on between training and technology. And the ship managers, the training centers are under pressure to prove that there is competent crew available to handle these technologies. Whereas when it comes to finding the people required for these type of trainings are missing in the first place, because the people who sail on these type of ships are then not available to train crew further. So has the time come to come up with some regulations where seafarers who are going on these very specialized kind of ships to also have the onus of hand-holding the other seafarers and make sure that competence is transferred and enough manpower is available?
Yeah, I think that's going back to a topic. I guess it's about as ships become more complicated and complex, will there be a requirement for the ship, the crew on board to also have those certain skills that they need? And it seems a very sensible requirement, but I just wonder how that's going to work in practice.
And thank you for this question. Actually, this is a very important topic, and maybe we haven't touched upon the human element, in the whole transformation that we are going through. One of the most important things, part of the change management is actually to ensure that you have the right people, well trained. So you have to have a very robust training programs in place while you're going through this transition. So if you are actually building dual fuel vessels, you have to plan well ahead to ensure that you are actually providing the right training programs for the people who will be sailing on these vessels. Obviously, it's not fair to assume that anybody can actually handle these alternative fuels with a small familiarization or just coming in the yard before we receive deliveries. So probably, for example, if you are going for a dual fuel vessels, putting people on LNG sailing vessels or LPG sailing vessels, it actually will help them to understand exactly how this fuel can be handled, how this type of cargo can be managed, what are the risks associated with the handling, what are the issues with regard to loading, offloading. There is actually quite an extensive training programs for all of these alternative fuels that I think all the operators need to include as part of their change management when they go through this kind of transition.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Anup Khan. I'm from Howden Insurance Brokers, ex-ship manager. I've been hearing a lot about alternate fuels. My question to the panelists, distinguished panelists, or the audience is,
could you speak a bit closer to the mic? I think we can't hear you. So,
my question to the distinguished members in the panel and the general audience is: nobody talks about nuclear reactors. We already have. The Navy is using nuclear fuel, and I was reading an article that there was some research being done by one of the Korean shipyards about a mini nuclear reactor for merchant ships. So is this something that the industry can push IMO towards eventually moving to nuclear reactors? Does anybody think, has anybody given thought about that?
Nuclear-powered vessels, I think this is something that, this is my personal belief, that it may come in the future. However, one of the biggest challenges maybe as an operator, which port can actually receive these vessels, and which kind of port will accept to actually receive a vessel with such kind of risks. I believe also the designs are not there, so it will take quite a few years to actually develop the design of these vessels in order to ensure that all the safety measures are in place. I think we have seen some papers published by a number of classification societies about molten salt reactor and how they actually can be deployed on the vessels and how they are very efficient. But honestly, as operators, we don't even know how much it will even cost in terms of capex, in terms of design and capabilities required to operate these vessels. I believe this is something definitely, that may be in the very future, maybe, but not very soon, maybe another 10, 15 years later.
Also, question. I guess it will take some very brave ship owner to be the first person to order a ship. Anyway.
Yeah, just reference to this, because it is very sensitive when topics when it's touching the nuclears today, as these investments is taking a place as R&Ds, but also we've seen it in numbers of non-commercial vessels are using the nuclear facilities. But still, we are a bit far behind that stage when it's come to the regulations and the port authorities and the shipping owners and the operator itself as a ship management to handle such of sensitive energies. We can also use that efforts to be utilized into alternative energies that is today is adopted in the markets and also into the operations, where we can diverse these energies. So there is a big gaps and missings in regulations and policies that can be deployed such of energies.
Okay. Thanks very much. I think you say it's a technology for the future, perhaps not one that's imminent, but has got a lot of potential going forwards. And there are technologies now that 20 years ago you would have said were not feasible, but are now sort of gaining ground. So it is something that can happen. But yeah, no, I'll just ask everybody the same question. I mean, I think one of the common themes of the opening presentations was around the need for collaboration, cooperation. I just wondered if you were going to single out one particular area of collaboration that you would like to see within the tanker shipping sector over the next few years, what would it be and what benefits would you like to see, Captain?
I think the best collaboration we would like to see is between ship owners, ship charterers, and the ports, because this way you can actually close the loop in order to ensure that you design the right vessel for the right trade and ensure that the right fuel is available and infrastructure. We have seen collaborations like this between CMA, CGM, and Total when they built the dual fuel container vessels, and also there was another collaboration with the Singapore ports to ensure that this infrastructure was available. I believe this type of collaboration will definitely accelerate the meeting all the decarbonization future initiatives.
Thank you. Captain Ammar, same question to you.
I believe personally the exchange in best practices and knowledge and experiences among the maritime industries, because if we now collect all of these questions, it's about the conclusion of all of these questions is about the clarities of the futures. And this is really where we need to touch the points of the sustainable futures energies that it will take a place to protect the environment and also sustain the business. So I believe in exchanging the best practices, exchanging the policies, strategies among the maritime industries. It is the vitals and key factors to make it successful.
Okay, thank you. Franck.
What I hope to see is a result of all the developments and all the investments there has been in the GCC area over the last 20, 25 years into the maritime sector. And I really think with the COVID having further accelerated that interest to the Middle East, then a much closer and much more engaged cooperation between the GCC countries, or maybe the operators and owners and technology development in the GCC area, to do something together to really take it to the next step. That is what I really would love to see going forward.
Okay. Thank you. Nitin.
Yeah, I would say, ship owners in general have been like on not on the same page forever. because everybody looks at sustainable competitive advantage in their businesses. My only thought would be that if we all can come together and have a proper R&D done together, so that not to use sustainability and net zero as competitive advantage, I think that will be best for not only us but for future generations. So we need to come together, and even that, if that means implementation of a carbon tax, so we all pay for that R&D, we should all come together and do it collectively.
Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
I would say, like I mentioned earlier, I think training is a joint responsibility, not just here, but within the industry. Training of our crew. I'm saying we need to work on an upgrade on STCW, because I think that's well overdue.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, I like to put the word for digitalization. I think we, through our Storm Geo platform, now start to see that we start to take major steps. In the beginning, it was a little bit of a playground, but there are some really good features on how can we optimize the speed of a vessel so it arrive in a port and not go too fast and arrive too early. How can we assist in remote support? I mean, many times when we send a service engineer on board, it is a little bit to come and help with the fault finding. Can we get the tools? Can we get the spares required? So once the service engineer is deployed, it comes with the right spares and the right tools, and because that is also saving carbon footprint and cost, not having the service engineers travel unnecessary and time and uptime. So digitalization, and there I think we need to stay open and tight and sharing data and sharing learnings. I think there are a lot of things we can learn from that.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we've had an interesting morning. I mean, interesting, we haven't talked much about trade, which is perhaps a significant thing, because I get the impression that at the moment the focus is very much this common goal of making sure that tanker shipping can be sustainable going into 2030, and then beyond to 2050. And that is an overriding, if not the overriding, objective that sort of runs through all these discussions, and it has implications for the landside infrastructure, for crewing, obviously for technology. So many technology implications, both for what types of ships do the owners order for the future, but in particular what technologies, I think we've made a couple of, what technologies can they bring onto those ships during their dry docking periods to reduce energy consumption and thereby reduce their environmental impact. Clearly there are some big trade implications as well, looking ahead, which we haven't touched on, and perhaps that's for another whole other conference, is that once we start reducing the amount of sort of conventional fuel oil consumed and energy and generally, then that will also reduce the demand for the products that people transport around the world. And I think there was a study recently that said sometime after 2030 oil demand will peak. But in the meantime, I think we're all united in the need to create a green tanker shipping world, and I think the speakers today have highlighted that really well. So I hope you will join me in thanking the speakers this morning and the panelists. They've done an excellent job, so a round of applause please for our speakers.